Hello and welcome to the Optimized Equine Podcast. In this episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dev Branham of Devereux Sport Horses. Dev grew up and began his career in the traditional hunter-jumper world, but later found himself on a path he couldn't have imagined previously. This conversation is filled with so many awesome nuggets on horsemanship, feel, connection, and the evolution that takes place within us with the horse's help. Enjoy the episode. Hello, here we are today with Dev Branham with Devereux Sport Horses, based out of Tomball, Texas. So, welcome. Glad to have you today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
No problem. So, here's a little backstory. Dev and I met way back, apparently, in 2011.
Yeah,
through a mutual
long time ago.
Yeah, a mutual client who moved from Arizona to your barn in Texas. And I would say at the time, and you'll have to tell me if you would have described it the same, but I would say at the time we were just two traditional hunter-jumper trainers.
That is very much true. Yeah, Jin's transition was very similar.
Yeah, so at that point, I was, when I realized it was 2011, I was like, man, I was farther from my transition than I thought at that point. So, yeah, for me, it kind of came around the Barnaby era,
What year would that have been that you started to kind of...
I think 2014.
2014, yeah. Mm-hmm. For me, it was around 2013, so...
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, pretty similar.
Well, so that'll lead me into... what do you feel about the term natural horsemanship, or is that what you would say you do? How do you answer that question?
So I think I would say that maybe to someone that maybe didn't have any idea what we would be doing, because it would give them some form of context. Mm-hmm. So the work I'm doing, but I really personally just consider it horsemanship. Mm-hmm. The natural part of it is a given. I don't feel like it needs to be said, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's just horsemanship. We're just doing things with horses and doing the best that we can with the knowledge that we have.
Sounds like you defined horsemanship for me right there.
Yes.
Why, thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. But I think that the other thing with the natural part of it is, I think if we're trying to put things in a way to help educate, I think it can sometimes be a standoffish term. I think people have a preconceived notion of what it is, and it can sometimes close doors.
Yeah. I agree. I think, the same way you're saying, I think sometimes I would use it if someone asked if I did that, and I can tell they're basically just saying, oh, you do groundwork.
Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah.
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 But it's not a term I would call myself out.
Exactly. Yeah.
I agree. I kind of I just use horsemanship, and it means different things to everybody anyway. So I've got my own version of what that means and go with that. I don't necessarily, if I were to break it down, I think I would say I don't agree with natural, because I don't think what we're doing with horses is natural. I think it's super connected, but it's not natural.
Yeah.
So I think we can make each other better, but that isn't necessarily natural. Yeah.
Exactly. And the pursuits that we're looking for aren't natural, as you said.
No.
It, of course, may then require unnatural means to get there. But I think the key is, we're always looking into the best interest, of the horse. Not, this is something that we're forcing on the horse. This might be something new to the horse. But how can we present this in a way that they can take their horseness, the things that make them a horse, biologically, emotionally, mentally, and take those elements and help them start to understand the pursuit that we're after, versus just pretending that this is something that's natural or like that they would be doing on their own, that they would be jumping a course of jumps or chasing after cattle on their own.
Yeah. And I think there's some people that take that the natural term and they take that to the extreme of never asking anything of the horse. And I honestly think they're missing out. Like you're not bettering each other as much.
Exactly.
And they would argue that. I'm actually 100% sure they would argue that. That's fine. Yeah. Anywho, we could go down that rabbit hole for a while. But I will back up. So you said in about 2013 was when you kind of switched over. What was there an event you found a thing, or how did that go for you?
Yeah, a little bit of all of that. I had grown up doing hunter and jumper. My parents were trainers in the quarter horse world. We did over fences stuff with the quarter horse. After college, I didn't feel like going back, and I had a degree in psychology. What am I going to do with that, right? So it was like grad school or nothing. And so I was like, hey, what if I started training? And my parents were like, oh no. And I'm like, just a year, I'll go back to school eventually. And so went home, started working with horses my parents had at home, started reconnecting with some of their former clients, and just kind of kept plugging away at it. And next thing I know, I have a business going. And I'm like, I'm not going back to school. I'm getting the right horses. And I get to work with horses every day. This is awesome. And so, over the years, I built up a good business. I had a good clientele. Around the time that Jen moved to Texas and started riding with me, I had a full barn and was showing and taking a lot of clients to shows and had a good thing going. But what started to show up around that time that Jen came in, like around 2011, was like I just felt plateaued. And it felt like the only way forward to get more of my own competition goals or to help my clients meet their goals was to go more into making horses do stuff. And I felt like at that time that I was good at that as I wanted to be. Like that the next step in that just didn't feel good. And so to me, like I had, it's not that I was ever like that harsh of a trainer or a yeller screamer, but I felt disconnected. And the more I got into it, the more busy I got, the more into the competing I got, the more disconnected I started to feel from who I was and who I wanted to be with horses and who I wanted to be with the people around me. And that just over time started to have more weight. And at some point it was like, I need to find something, or I need to be done and go to school, I guess. Time to go back and be a psychologist, I guess. And so I was really struggling with that. And Jen, Jen and I were dating at the time, and she knew I was going through that. She was seeing it every day, and she was and still is always looking up stuff, always watching things, learning. And she at one point stumbled across this video on YouTube, and she's like, you're not going to like any of the rest of this video, but you need to see this one guy. And it was Mark Rashid. And I watched that video and I'm like, holy cow, this is, he's working with the horse. He's talking about having feel, he's talking about being clear and communicating and, considering the horse's perspective from things. And I'm like, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. And so just a month later, he was doing a clinic just north of us in Texas. We went and audited. And the whole time I'm like, I have a question. I was like, every minute I was like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? So, and after that clinic, I was just so excited. So I go home and I must have seemed like a crazy person to my clients. I show up after that auditing a clinic with some guy that no one knew and I show up and I'm like, all right, guys, all we have to do is think about what we want and it'll happen. we just have to think trot and we're going to be able to trot. And all my clients, God bless them, were just like, what's happening? Because I hadn't really at that time expressed to anyone that I'd been having trouble, and so all of a sudden, everyone's seeing this thing kind of going very smoothly, and now here I am showing up, all of a sudden changing it, and presenting something very different. And then just dove into it. They were back in Texas a few months later. I went and clinicked again, actually bought a horse. Jen did too. And then just kept up with it and kept working. And, but it was really interesting because it's like one of those things where it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And then you become aware of what you don't know, but you still don't know it. And I was in that phase for a very long time. And still there. Argument can be made, I'm still there. But it was
in some ways that's what makes good coaches, and I think that example doesn't exist much in hunter jumper lands. I think clinics is a good example of that. You'll have to tell me if your experience was the same, switching over to a horsemanship type of clinic. I used to do clinics before too. I'm sure you do. But it was what a clinic was a whole different deal than going to a horse clinic. And then you start to realize what horsemanship is a whole different deal.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a very different because I was actually doing a few clinics locally myself, and it'd be 6 people for an hour and a half in a group that I'm sitting through a grid and not really being too thoughtful about anyone's particular experience. And then I started going to one-on-one clinic, and then and so then trying to present that kind of change into the hunter jumper world's been interesting too. Of what do you mean we won't do a group clinic? What do you mean you want to work with one person for an hour? And yeah. But so to kind of put a cap on all that, as far as the change, I was in the weeds for a while. I knew the feel of what I was trying to learn, and I knew what it meant for me and my horses, but I didn't know it well enough to communicate it. And so, you spend time doing what you need for you to become the horse person you are, so that then you can share that with other people. And, business kind of scaled back. I had some clients that just were amazing. And even though they didn't really understand what I was doing or what I was trying to create for me, the horses in our barn, my clients, they stuck with it because I had developed that trust over time, and I was really grateful for that because it paid the bills while I was figuring things out.
Yes.
Yeah. And it just follows. It's just learning. You understand that there's something different you can be doing that will feel better. You learn what those things are. You start to try to develop in you that thing and embody it. And then once you have that embodiment, then you can start to share it with other people. And I'd like to say that that's kind of where I'm getting to is I'm at that point where I have enough of an understanding of it that I can present it to people in their unique and their horse's unique place, so that it's not just, okay, this is what we do. It's, hey, here's where you're coming at this from. Here's where your horse is coming at this from. Why don't we look at it this way? And it's really exciting. A really exciting place to be. And it was a difficult journey, and I'd do it again. It's because essentially you give up something that's known to go into the unknown. And it was totally worth it for the changes that it created.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is interesting about us is how we kind of had that change around the same time, and we weren't really it wasn't related at all,
it just totally independently.
It was a totally different deal. And in your case, you did stay in hunter jumper.
I did.
And I would say that I didn't purposely leave hunter jumper, but I do know for sure in the beginning that that floundering period you speak of, where you're really, you know what you want, but you're still learning how to get it. And I mean, we're always learning, but at that point, the curve is steep. So,
It is.
and I remember just still trying to take clients to shows
Mm-hmm.
and being like, man, if I don't want to do it this way, this is pretty hard.
Yeah, yeah. How is this getting done?
It's not to say that I didn't think it was hard before or whatever. It's more like, wow, like the holes that need to be filled
Mm-hmm.
here, I am realizing are cavernous.
Yeah.
This is really hard to do well without relying on some of this other stuff I was doing. And I wouldn't say that I was like, well, I guess I better stop. It never went like that for me. I think had Barnaby stuck around, I probably would have stayed in the same way. But when I didn't have that, and then the clientele thing that you speak of, it gets to be a really weird place where you have this mix of people, like some who are like believing in the vision and they're there for the vision, and then some that are like, oh yeah, this vision sounds cool, and I want to do 100 jumpers, and you'll do 100 jumpers, and then it just kind of ends up being so.
It's a mix. Yeah. No, I think for me, like, I had a pragmatism at that stage of it that I had to survive. You know, I had to pay the bills. I had to, I had my own horses that I had to feed. Like it.
Yeah.
And so, like, what that created was like, I was really lucky at the time to have some clients that were like, oh, you want to just do walk and halt with my green horse for 6 months? Okay. The horse that you've been showing that just won, champion in the local circuit, last year, you want to go back and walk that horse for 6 months? Okay. Okay, sure. That's fine. And, and so and then I had other clients that were just so patient where I could enough express like the vision I had for it and how things could go. And they were willing, like, again, because I had developed that trust over time, for them to be like, okay, let's do it. And to also then buy into doing the work as well, to making changes for them. And then there were situations where it's like, I'm going to do the softest thing I can here and try to be as clear as possible, but I need this to kind of pay the bills. So we will mesh things together. And in doing so, it's not that locks it in. Like, I think there's always a path. Like, if you try to blend things too much, that can be confusing and unclear to the horse, right? And to the people involved. But I do think there is a way to mesh and guide, to take what someone is able to bring in that moment and what a horse is able to bring in the moment, and then start to guide that to somewhere else. And I think the thing with that was people have to buy into it. They might not be able to see the whole picture or have the same feel around it that you do, but if they can understand that there might be a softer, kinder way of doing something, and they want that, I think you can start to guide that for people, and meeting them where they're at and kind of helping them where they're at, not in a drastic change kind of way, but what if we did this thing you're doing a little bit differently? What if we tried this thing instead of this thing and see what happens? Does that get us closer to what we're looking for and what we're feeling? And that was helpful to kind of bridge that gap. But the other thing that
well, I was going to say, it sounds like that kind of forced you to be able to help those people or horses, and if you look at it that way as well, that are not all the way there. They're not all the way where you want them. They're not all the way soft. I think there's definitely something to be said for going and doing it anyway and being able to still work on the goal.
Yes.
I think in a way, like in my case, I was lucky that I found all these other alternative things to do, and then I had clients that were like, well, that looks fun. Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
We started doing all these different things, and it was cool in that way, and it was a different path. But I think one downfall to that path of this other way that you're describing kind of doesn't allow you to go there is like that, a little bit of that like self-righteous path of like, oh, there's that way and I don't do that anymore. And like, just, you know, that holier than thou phase when you see that.
Yeah, well, and who am I to say? Right, I try to keep that attitude about it. Like, who am I? I'm some guy from Texas doing this. Like, I don't have that. You know, I hope to maybe in time have that, the accolades behind it to be like, wow, look how that guy's doing this and look what he's doing. Like, yeah, maybe not, but for people, I think like, you know, I can work with the people that are looking for that opening for things to feel better and for the horses to feel better. I don't have to work with the people that aren't looking for that right now. And nor do I need any judgment around that. Like, it's okay. People are doing the best they can with what they know, and the horses that they, you know, and the horses are doing the best they can with the people that are around them. You know, everyone's in a different phase of this, but I do think there's like an overall push toward more kindness, more clarity, more softness, less or, you know, more cooperation with the horses. But it's nascent, like it's young. It's.
Would you say you're feeling that in the hunter jumper community specifically?
I see the words. You hear the words. You're not, in my mind, you're not quite seeing the actions yet. But the words are being said, and that's interesting.
Well, that's where it starts.
That's where it starts, yeah. And I think it sounds good to people, but I don't think there's like a cohesive picture as to what that actually means in the way that we work with horses yet. Hopefully, as it starts to gain some impulsion, like there will be examples of it. And I mean, I've had this happen. I have clients now that came because they saw me working with horses and they were like, well, that's different. What's that? And they were curious because they could see the difference, and they could see the difference in the way the horse was feeling. They could see the difference in the way the people are feeling in the situation. And, you know, I think that example of it is what can pull people in and really create change, at least at an individual level.
Yeah.
You know, at a microcosm of it.
Is it clear for you to see I'll make this two parts. Things in your program, both like your at-home program, but also like your show program, what has remained the same and what has totally changed? Or is it just like, oh, it's totally changed? Or like, oh yeah, well, this is about the same. This is totally different. This is where we've meshed it. Like, is that kind of easy for you to see, or is it so blended?
Yeah. No, I actually think at this point it's pretty clear. Like I don't push horses. You know, if I don't think that they're like, if it's not a question they can answer. So if a horse isn't ready to show, they're not ready to show. If we need to like work on something to help them feel more comfortable away from home, if they need more understanding around the job, so that if they are a little nervous, they have access to the skill set they need to answer the questions we're asking. You know, if we, the people working with them, aren't clear enough to be able to support them in a higher stress situation, we don't show, we don't go. And so in that way, I feel like at this point, in like for my clientele, I've essentially, the clientele I have now has come in since this change. So like everyone that's in is bought into what I'm selling. I haven't changed up on it.
Right. Yeah.
And the horses have bought in on it. Right? Like they're like, oh, this is great. This is going so much better. So I don't really see much difference between like the work we're doing at home and then like when we go to shows. But I do have like 5 horses at home I show out of 20. So, like the whole barn isn't to that point where I think they could
by
all.
the time they're ready to go to the show, when you actually get there, it isn't all that different than it used to be. Is that kind of what you're?
Yeah, we do. I would say that we are doing things differently, though. Like, I would be mindful of like the horse's experience of it. So it's not just, all right, pull them out, groom, get some tack, go to the ring, show, come back. It's okay. Like each step of the way, we're trying to make sure that the horse is okay. Okay, so like we get off the trailer and we're at the stall. Are we okay in the stall area? Okay, now we're groomed and we're walking to the warm-up ring. How are we feeling here? Okay, you're doing okay. Your hand, like every, so it now, okay, we start jumping in the warm-up ring. How is that going? Oh, things got busier in here. All of a sudden now there's 10 more horses. How are you feeling about this?
Yeah.
We go to the ring. How are we feeling around the ring? Like, so just making sure, like, where in the past, what I would have done is just like, I was nervous, I'll canter around until it feels, like I'm not really attending to the horse's needs in the past. Like, so
it definitely sounds like you're saying, and I would say this is the same for me for sure. Whether I'm going to a hunter jumper or anywhere else for that matter, the dialogue and the communication with the horse is a huge difference now than it used to be.
Yes,
and I would
exactly.
have said I was listening to my horse then.
That's I would have as well.
I absolutely would have said, I'm not ignoring my horse, and of course I'm paying attention to how they feel. And it just is such a different level of it that it's like you're not ignoring anything and you're communicating back and forth with it. There is an active dialogue going on, and sometimes that means you're not getting on yet. Or
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I don't care if our warm-up time ends in 30 minutes. Like, we cannot do this,
Yeah, and then if we don't show that day, that's fine. It's like, I really make sure that we're not beholden to anything other than just, are we doing this in a way that feels the best and we understand it? And yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like, there is an education that's happened over the last 10 years that like, again, it's that thing, you didn't know what you didn't know. If from what we knew back then, it was okay. Like, things felt fine. This horse is fine.
Yeah.
Now it's so much more clear. No, this horse is not fine. He's stoic, or he's repressed his, and this, and so he is going along with this, but he doesn't understand it. This horse is jumping well, but he doesn't understand jumping. He just is doing it. And so that's the other part that's different than in the past is, like, when we actually get into the show ring, like, I look at what happens in the ring a lot differently. Like, and try to, okay, what did I miscommunicate here? What about this task is not understood? Like, is there some, like, where are the holes? And then what do we do to help the horse have more clarity on these? And what can I do as the rider to provide that clarity? Or is there an emotional element to this that we haven't helped the horse through, that we missed? As much as I'm better at what I'm doing, I still miss stuff. But the big difference is I don't push through it anymore. It's like, okay, I missed this. Let's go back. And if that means we don't show today, or if this horse doesn't show this week, okay, that's fine, because we're setting them up for success later.
For myself, like, there was an awareness certainly of our horse's emotions. I feel like, you'd almost like joke about, or whatever, our horse being spooky at this, or the scary corner, or, like, there's definitely an awareness that there is emotion involved. And it's so funny looking back, like, how stupid the tactics that are used against those issues are. Like, gosh, that makes no sense. How in the world was I doing that and thinking that was going to work? It's just hard to even, like, get your brain back to that state of mind where that seems logical. Like, yes, of course, just push that horse over there, that over to that, do it.
Yeah, do it.
What do you need? Like, what weapon do you need? Get it over there. Needs a lunge? Go lunge it.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know. It's hard to think back to that state of mind and how that makes sense.
Well, I think it's because it's what we're taught. Doesn't it like? But it's, and I mean, I don't know if we can maybe get into the education part, because that's kind of one of my passions around all this. But a lot of education in the horse world is being told what to do and told what's right. There's not a lot of critical thinking that happens in the education phase of it, in my opinion. And so, and then I think the second part of it is language. Like, when a horse is struggling with something, a lot of times, like, words like disrespectful, silly, like this, like just things that we're using to describe the horse that then drive the action. Like, we're describing a horse as disrespectful, which they can't be. That's going to create a behavior in us that we're going to do to the horse. But
a lot of justification. There's
a justification,
of storylines that create justification. That's one of the things I think that's hard when I first left hunter jumper land into horsemanship land, is like you kind of start to see all this like cult starting stuff, and I feel like there's so many things that happen in a justification of safety. Like, we got to make it safe, and it's like it's easy to follow that story. Like, we do in the name of everyone, for that horse, for everyone, we got to make this horse safe, and this is the way. And it's just so disconnecting from the horse, though, to do it that way. So
it is.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of provides an interesting alternative definition of horsemanship, right? Like, I think a lot of that stuff, like in the hunter jumper world, and I think in the colt starting world too, is like horsemanship is stuff we do to horses. It's just what
that colt starter has to make the disconnected horses so that the hunter jumper trainer can go do what they're going to do.
Exactly. Or the person that maybe shouldn't be handling that horse can do what they're going to go do.
And I should not be using such labels. I'm just as an example.
Yeah, but like, I think an alternative way of seeing horsemanship is like, how do we become better horsemen? Like, how do we improve ourselves and do the work for ourselves where we can be present and accountable for every horse that we encounter, versus the horse is having to change for us. How can we change to better serve the horse? Like, for me, that's a more accurate definition of horsemanship. And one that lends itself to better success and happier people, happier horses, ultimately.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, how it's inevitable. Once you go there, you can't stop the whole personal development.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's intertwined. Yeah.
You can't stop it. You can't do just one piece of it. And I think for some people, that is kind of what keeps them from going there. I think some people are genuinely not exposed and don't understand what someone like you or I is doing when we're going slow and having a dialogue with the horse, and I think others can't. They start to dip their toe in the waters and they realize how
they
realize how hard it is. Like, no, you literally want me to walk for I don't care if it's 6 months. We're going to walk until we're functioning.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's an element too. Yeah, exactly. When's this done? I think there's an element too of like, someone may spend an hour a day with a horse, and if they're only working on the things they need to do for that to go well in that hour, that's 23 other hours that they could be working toward that goal of being more present, being better for their horse, improving themselves for their horse. And I think that's difficult, because for me, this has all been a lifestyle change. And it's like, I have the time that I work with the horses, but I've had the time that I've had to like apply to my own emotional management and my own quieting of energy and my own like being more present and clear in situations that I'm in. That's all been work I've had to do for myself, that was not attached to a horse. In fact, the early part of that work has to be done far, far away from horses because it is unfair for the horse to have to be subject to that, to me working on that. But
yeah. Now, before we leave the show section here altogether, I did have one thing I wanted to ask you that has just been on my mind lately, and that is, like, do you have thoughts on some of the stuff going around the socials about activists and how if we're not all careful, we better watch out because all competitions are going to get taken away and regulated and all this stuff? Like, do you have thoughts on that, or have you even like entered this realm or heard?
So I haven't entered that realm. I have seen that argument. I mean, I've seen it mostly in horse racing, right? Like but I have seen, like, especially like right before the Olympics, there were a lot of that discussion going on, and that I think that is a bit alarmist, but I think like I think there are other reasons we can look to warrant change versus that. Like I don't think I don't know that I would say, oh, we could lose all this that we get to do with horses if we don't change. That doesn't seem like a valid reason to change. It's like,
I agree with you there, because I don't think that's true. I just don't think. I think I agree. It's a little alarming. Now, that upper level competitions may have some things to worry about when it comes to sponsorships. Like, I think there's a sector that probably does have some things to worry about.
Yeah.
But I think, like, if you look at horse people as a whole,
no,
I don't think we all need to worry that there's going to be a law passed that we're not allowed to ride horses anymore.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, that's interesting with the higher level of competition because it is so sponsored based. But such a large part of it is self-sponsored too. Like, so a lot of the people providing horses for the high elite athletes are also buying the name sponsor on the Grand Prix they're in. They're paying for all the, like, so I even think that element of it, while maybe has like a little bit of risk, I wouldn't put it so high that I think anyone at that level is going to be like, oh, we need to overhaul how we're doing this, and any more than they're doing from, because I mean, you can say that there have been change, like for, I think they are being more cognizant of like aggressive use of aids and tools, and like they're very strict on the drug rules. Like, they've made surface level change. I don't think the risk of losing sponsors will be enough for like that fundamental change in the way that we see a relationship with horses.
Yeah, the big shift that we described in 2013 and 14.
Yes.
That's not what is.
I don't think that will create that change if it doesn't already exist for a person, right? And it,
I think and that's expose the rabbit hole to more people to dive into. Like myself, like I didn't. A lot of what I got into, I did not know existed. Literally. What I mean?
No, me too. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know the results that were possible existed, and I didn't know anything about horses like that was possible.
Yep.
So,
Oh yeah, like if I went back to like 2010 me, and like was like, here's what you're going to be doing in 2024, they've been like, what are you talking about? What is that? Like,
I couldn't have understood the words.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And I think that's why that level of change at the higher level is going to be difficult, and maybe it's some time off, is the words are just so different. Like, I think that communication is difficult because the words that at that level, and even just horse shows in general, I would say, not even at the elite level, but local level and regional level too, the language is so different that it's just tough to have the conversations right now.
That's one
and
I talk about that a lot, how it is challenging to even use words, because it's like every single word in the sentence you try to say has a very deep meaning in one direction or another. And
yeah, it's a 30-minute conversation, right?
yeah, and one thing I've noticed, I think I see what you mean as far as like the words are there. I see in people's advertisements, let's say, and descriptions of their programs and things like that, I'm starting to see more and more use of words that I would use, you know, and I think that's a good thing. But then it's also like, but it sort of like waters down the word.
It does.
Now everybody's using the word, and
yeah.
or the word. You get what I'm saying? It's not the word.
Yeah.
But you know, everyone's using these words about communication and this and that, and how soft things are, and ethical, and this and that. You know, whatever direction people are going, and it's like, I think it's really important that it's being said, but it's like, well, how does anyone? You know, the only way to know what that word means to that person is to dive in and kind of commit and see what it looks like for them, because
exactly.
I know so many people that use the same words as me. Maybe it's Chat GPT, I don't know, but what they're doing, they have very different ideas of what is going on and what the results are. You know, it's so interesting to watch that sort of change. Where I feel like maybe 5 years ago, someone talking about calm communication and feel and this and that, it's like they would be more likely to be on the same page as me, whereas now it's like, well, everybody's saying it.
Yeah. What does that actually mean?
Or not? You know, sometimes people will say, oh yes, this person, they're like you, and I'm like, are they? I mean, our Facebooks might have the same words, that is true, but anyway.
But and then it's just a follow-up question for people is like, well, what does that mean to you? Like, what are the actions you're taking around that idea? And
I think a lot of them don't know, and that's what I mean. It's like, you kind of have to dive in and see what it turns into, see if it's for them in a way, which I think is an annoying answer. But when a client's like, oh, is this person good, or should I come to you, or whatever?
But I mean, because that's where it all starts, right? And someone will either, it's interesting, like like a lot of times, like when I'm working with people, if I'm clinicking or if it's someone new that comes into the barn, or like the best example of what I'm getting to is like if I get a phone call for a prospective client and I start talking, it's either an hour-long conversation or they're hanging up on me after 2 minutes. There's no in between. Yeah, there's no in between. And that's, and again, like I just think some people, either they're just not kind of ready for that layer of work, which is totally fine. There are plenty of other options for them to go have an experience with a horse. Like but I think there are a lot of people that are hungry for it without knowing it, and they start to hear not the words, but like the actual vibe that somebody is emitting when they're saying it, or they see the action someone is taking around the words that they are saying and believing, and I think they are like, man, that's awesome. I want more of that. I can't, like, when can we start? How often can I come? Like, and I think like it, and that's awesome, right? But I think it's, people know when they're really looking for it when they see it and when they hear it, even if like you're saying the words and then, you know, someone somewhere else is saying the words. I think people that are really looking to do the work are able to distinguish when it's authentic and when it's not.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, but yeah, it is an
That's a good way
interesting.
to say it, because you said people looking to do the work. And there are people that are looking for things, but they're not looking to do the work. And I was kind of thinking, like, you know, I have experienced many times where, like, people are excited and they like, oh, this is so cool what you're doing. They are so into it. And as they dive in, maybe it's that it gets too hard.
Yeah, or it gets real.
So they can't get to the other side of it, you know, whereas there's this other type of client that, like, man, that, you know, it's a roller coaster and they're riding it all the way down. They're gonna get back up.
Yeah.
Thing. Like, once you've done it enough, like, it's so easy for me to see, like, it's fine. You're gonna get back up. It's gonna just keep on going, you know. But yeah, it's definitely like a thing of people who I think are excited for change and want to do this different thing, and they're so excited, and then it's just like, no.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's a pattern you have seen a little bit, or
it totally 100%? And like, but I get it. Like, people have other things going on. People have families. People have work. Like, I've seen people. I get the really awesome opportunity to work with Mark during he does some long-term clinics during the summer in Colorado. And, you know, during those clinics, I get to see people coming back year after year after year. And, you know, so I get to see, like, the people that are full on all the time, full blast, like making progress all the time. And then, but I've also gotten to see the people that hit a wall, but then come back later in a different life situation, in a different mindset, like, and then are full blast going for it. And, you know, and so there's so much of it. It's just such a dynamic thing. And I think, like, in the horsemanship we're doing, how we are showing up in it is so important. But that's one of the most difficult human things to do, is to control how we are showing up. And I think everyone can do it, but I get the fact that you may be in a point in your life where you can't right now. But you'll check back in a year, and you might be ready to go then. And so it's, you know, and then in the meanwhile, if you want to stick around, we'll help with what we can. Because there's always, like, if we're making things 5% better, that's still better. And it might not be everything that it could be, but it's something. Like, it's an improvement. And it opens the door a little bit so that when someone's ready to go even deeper, they can. It's there. They have that option. But I try really hard to not close it off for anyone. It's like, I think it's really important as an educator in this work to just show up for people where they're at, and just help them. And I think that's what kind of played into what we were talking about earlier with the showing and the hunter jumper world. Like, yeah, they're like, just show up where people's at. Horse is getting a little better, person's feeling a little better about things. That's a win. And it's creating an opening for something even bigger down the road. If they want, if they choose, if they're capable.
And if they don't want, like you're saying, it's where they're at.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. I would offer that same, that same vibe to the horse. That's where this horse is at. So this is where we're going to work with them. Like it.
It is so much easier for me. Thank God for horses, because taught me how to do things like this. But you know, that's so much easier for me to be like that with a horse.
It is.
A person. You know? It's hard to imagine how I would have ever, like, improved at all. Certainly more room to go, but it's hard to imagine how I would have improved in that way at all without horses kind of like showing how to just do that.
Yeah, because horses are like, well, you're showing up like this, so this is, I guess I'll deal with you like this. Like, yeah, they're very good educators along that way. But I'd say for you, like, for anyone that's in this space educating, that's struggling with the human element of it, like, there was probably a time where and I know this for me, where I saw the horses like, well, what's up with the horse? Why aren't they not able to do this? What's wrong? Like, why aren't they work like? And then part of this whole work was like coming to that understanding that, yeah, there's a horse there. We've got to help them kind of feel better, help them get more clarity, be present for them, be my best self. Like, so just like we were able to kind of get to that place with the horses, we can get that way with the people that are attached with the horses. But it is ever a practice.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it sure.
And a fun part of it. But,
yeah. Yeah. So I was going to ask you about your mentors. Obviously, you have mentioned Mark Rashid a few times. Would you say that's your
very much mentor? So? Yeah, very much so. Like I tell you, it life-changing stuff. Like I found his work at a point when I needed something like to change, and yeah, it's just been amazing. The opportunities that I've gotten to have working with him and the things that I've learned are just like forever grateful for. But the idea of what the work we're doing is like, it's principle based versus like a how-to program, right? Like it's, and I think that's been really cool for me because like it was like I think a lot of hunter jumper stuff is how to. There's a lot of how to books, 101 things you can do for this thing, right? The complete guide to equitation, right? Like all the stuff. Like if there's a how to, there's a book about it in the hunter jumper world, right? Like but what I found is like it doesn't work that way. Like there's things you can do, but then the horse is an individual, the person's an individual, the situation is individual, and so having like working within a concept of like a principle based concept where it like it's helped create like an intuitive creativity to the work that I really appreciate. That it's like, yeah, the possibilities are endless. This situation could go any way that we want it to go. We just have to understand the horse. We have to understand us. We have to understand how we're interacting. We have to have an appreciation for like what our limitations and what our strengths are and what the horse's limitations and strengths are, and have a really clear intention of what we want, and then work from that and try something and have the awareness to know what that did. Did that help us get closer to what we're looking for? Or did it take us further? Are we the same? Okay, it got us closer. Let's do it again. Are we still getting closer to what we want? Yes. All right, let's do it again. Okay, now it's a little stagnant. Well, okay, let's twist it this way a little bit. Is this help? Yeah, that helped. Like, and it's just been a really rewarding and creative and open way to do work with horses and people. And it's different. It's not something I encountered in the hunter jumper world at all. It's like, oh yeah,
I love that you use the word creative, and I definitely can say one that I agree, and two that I would have never used the word creative in training.
Right. Like, yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, so, it's like because you're doing the thing that was written down 100 years ago, right?
I feel like, like you said, we keep learning and practicing and improving these certain skills, but I don't think, I mean, in retrospect, did I ever zoom out and learn like a totally different skill?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like, do the same thing over and over and over and get quieter and quieter and quieter and see your distance sooner and sooner and sooner.
Yep.
Nothing else changes.
Yep.
Nothing, you know. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. One story I tell, like the first clinic I did with Mark, I had bought a horse that was kind of like he would bulge in the turns going to a jump, right? And so hunter jumpers, like outside rein, outside leg, hold them on the line, like so I go to the clinic and I'm like at this point I'm like, I'm really wanting to try to get more into a feel and less like relying on pressure and being heavy, like and so I present the issue. We come up with something that works. The horse starts to straighten up. Everything's great. And I'm like, great, I've got the thing I can do softly to straighten a horse up in a turn, right? So I go home. It's going great with that horse. I get another horse in that has kind of a similar issue. And I'm like, great, I know how to fix this. I've got that thing. I do the thing. It doesn't work. And I'm like, well, shucks. So another clinic's rolling around. So I go to the clinic. Hey, I've got the same problem. Do the thing. And so then we try a different thing, and that helps this horse, right? And it's like, okay, oh great, now I have two things that help horses be straight, and I can always make them straight if these two things don't work. And so again, working with that horse, it's going great. Get another one in, same issue. I'm like, okay, I'll try the first thing. All right, that didn't work. I'll try the second thing. That didn't work. Now what? Okay, I'll go back to a clinic and learn the third thing, I guess. But it was like at that point that I started to realize, like, yeah, it has nothing to do with what we do. What we do is important. The technique we're using is important. But what I was missing was, like, am I understanding why is the horse bulging? Why is he having trouble being straight? Like, what physical things could be going on that are causing that straightness? Does he need to be adjusted? Does he need body work? Does he need masterson? Does he need saddle fit? Like, does he just not understand straightness? And can I be more clear in how I'm presenting this idea of being straight?
It's reading the room rather than like, I'm pulling out the tool from the toolbox.
Exactly. You can, and that's the creativeness. You can create your own tool when you understand the situation. You have clarity about what you're looking for. All of a sudden, your tool bag's infinite. Like, you have all these things at your disposal that you can do. And then I think intuition is a skill. Like, I think it's something that once we can start having more clarity and understanding about the situation and the horse, and we have a better understanding of what we're wanting and how we want things to feel for us and for the horse, then we start to try things and we hone in on that idea of, like, well, what would help here? What is the thing that might be good? And how can I do it in a way that's clear and helpful? And that was like a really big moment for me, that realization that it really has nothing to do. You can do any kind of technique, but if you don't have feel, like, if you're not
the right technique, wrong time is,
and that's exactly
that is so hard, because there's so many people that are used to, just like we were used to, teach me the tool and I'll put it in my toolbox. Teach it. You know what I mean? Like, I want it now, and I want to see the result, and it doesn't work. Like, well.
Okay, what's the next? Give me another thing.
I need another thing. I love that story. That's a great way to make that point of, like, there comes a point where you realize, like, it is about that dialogue with the horse and learning how to do that for yourself at any time. That's really what I want everybody to be able to find, you know, and not be dependent on their trainer, and not really be dependent. I mean, yes, like you said, the tools are important. I would say I have a toolkit as well. But if you are limited to that toolkit, it's a pretty limiting, and frankly, it's exhausting to keep filling it for every possible thing that could ever happen.
Yeah. Well, that, and, like, it's just, you hit roadblock. It's really easy to get discouraged when it's like, well, this didn't work, now what? Like,
and the horse is doing that, and it turns into, my horse doesn't like the arena. I don't like doing X, Y, Z, and it's like, a story starts to emerge. Energy behind it, and maybe you and your horse do.
Exactly. But and that's, another thought I have on the world as a whole is you can find hundreds and hundreds of how-tos, like especially with social media now. Everyone and their brothers out there with, here's how you fix this, here's how to do this, like here's the system of how to do it. If you're looking for a system, there's no lack of systems to go find
People can
and
do one
try
every day if you want.
exactly. And people do. People are like, well, this system didn't work. And there is a small percentage of those systems that are being presented in a way with a cohesive view of how horses are and what horses are and how they operate, and that like and so there are a few that do that. There are almost none that are talking about, and here's how you do this system. Like, so it's like, do these things, but it's not like, here's how you could feel while doing these things. Here's the way you need to show up while you're doing these things. And so like the things that they're doing probably are valid and might work, but I think people struggle with them. They try them and they're like, oh, this isn't working for me. Well, how was your day? Like, well, I got yelled at by my boss and my kids a little, I'm really stressed. And it's like, well, okay, like you're bringing that into the technique. Like maybe let's take a moment and breathe, get feeling a little better, be intentional about how we're coming into this, and then let's try the technique and see if it works then. And there's very little talk in the like horsemanship world about that aspect of it, and I think it's a really important part of it.
The nervous system behind whatever it is you're trying to do or say, I mean, it affects everything.
Exactly, and especially a horse.
It's perceived, about how it goes, about how everyone feels about it on the other side of it.
Yeah.
I think me and you are both into this feel thing and like the relationship thing. I think the nervous system side of it is the exact same thing. To me, I see it as the exact same thing. I just think that some people find it easier to enter the realm and understand, like coming from that scientific side of like, oh, nervous system regulation. You know what I mean? Like I feel it's biomechanics. It's all valid. It's all so important. And to me, I feel like it's all the same thing.
It is. Oh, I agree. And it's like, however it needs to be presented to connect to someone. Like, so if someone's like, I need the science behind this, like, how does the brain work that this all happens? And if someone's like, well, what's the spiritual part of it? And it's all valid. It's all the same thing. I agree. Like, and it's like, as an educator, it's like, well, how do I connect to where they're going to connect? Right. Like, how do I present? Like, and so I like to know all the aspects of it. So if I need to have a specific bit of knowledge to help someone understand something, I have it. It might not be the thing that connects it for me, but it's good to know because it'll help connect for someone else. It's interesting. That aspect of not like it being able to connect with nervous systems, right? Like to me, it's feel, but it's that it is real, but it feels magical. It's real, like it, there, like, and there's a lot of this stuff like around feel like that. Going back to like when I show up and I'm like, we can just think it and things are going to happen. There's a magicalness to that, right? But when we think about something, there are little changes that happen physiologically to us that horses are so perceptive they pick up on. So yes, we can think trot, and then that is an aid that the horse can pick up on and then trot.
I feel like it's the science actually isn't sophisticated enough yet to understand all of the biology and physiology truly going on, and a lot of people that are starting to make those connections, they're people that would get called woo-woo, and they already know it's true. They're just trying to figure out the science to like show it.
Exactly.
It's not there yet, and so it's woo-woo. Like, that's I think that's what we're both saying, in that it's one and the same. Feel, nervous system, and what's happening and why, and it's all the same.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And like, while the science isn't quite there, the outcome is there, right? Like, it's undeniable. Like, working with a horse with an energy and feel and intentionality, like, the results are there. Like, things change, things get better. Horses feel better because we're connecting at a layer that they are hardwired to do. And so the science, while it might be kind of catching up to what happens, we at least have outcome to kind of be like, hey, look, this took a while, but look how good, and look how solid it is, and look how resilient it is. Like, and look how much we feel better doing it. Like I think back to before I started this path, and it's like, yeah, I felt bad. I was doing okay, but I felt bad doing it. And finding a way that helped it feel better for me is what it took to help it feel better for the horses. Because I know my horses felt bad doing it, and I know my horses feel better now. Yeah.
Was it a personal horse? Did you have a personal horse at that time?
I had a couple. Yeah, I had a couple of young ones that my family had. It was the whole picture. It wasn't like one animal, and it was all of them. I just see
I think like guilted myself at times about like, well, how come like Barnaby was what changed it? Like, I truly loved my clients' horses. You know what I mean? I love the horses I got to ride and show so much. Like, it was not, so it's not like it was like, oh, I didn't care and I was getting a paycheck and then Barnaby. It wasn't like that, but I think it was because I wanted to start him myself, and I never did that before. And I think that's probably the reason I ended up having to seek out information and like, going over the ledge there a little bit,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, because you're like, yeah, this one's mine. I don't want to do right by it. Yeah, no, I get it.
It wasn't like that. It wasn't like the other ones were any less important to me.
No.
I when you, gosh, especially when you think back, but even at the time, you're like, this doesn't feel good. Like, you're doing what?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I will zoom out of that for just a moment, and I'll ask you about your plan. So, like, what does your business look like now? Is it kind of mostly lessons, training, showing, and is that where you want to stay, or where are you looking to be in 10 years with your horsing self?
I have no clue. Yeah. No, actually, this is the thing I've been putting a lot of thought into recently, because like I was a rudderless ship for like 10 years, right? Like I knew it was work I wanted to do. I knew, like, I was pretty much just taking. I would actually say it wasn't an intentional thing to remain in the hunter jumper world. I just did. I maintained enough clients to keep doing it. There were a few years where we barely showed. Like I want competing is fun for me and I enjoy it. And jumping is really fun for me and I enjoy it. So like I think that was always going to be kind of like fishing things in one direction, whether I was acknowledging it or not. Essentially for 10 years I was taking all comers. Whoever wanted to kind of come work with me, watch me mess around and find out like and be a part of that journey. And then I was just doing whatever. And so it's just the last few years, like as I've gotten better and I've been able to share more with the people that are coming in and that I've started to kind of give that more thought. And I think like the way things are now, I'm actually pretty happy with. Like I've got 5 or 6 clients that show, couple of lesson horses that like I bring in kind of intermediate riders to work with. And then some just interesting training horses that may or may not show down the road, but they're just interesting ones to work with.
Yeah.
like I'm being a little more specific these days, like about things that I want to work on or not, like especially as I'm getting older. I'm a little limited physically with some stuff at this point. I should be.
Yeah.
I'm coming to the realization that I should be more careful. Reluctantly coming to that conclusion. So yeah, it's I think like big picture right now is kind of maintaining the balance of things. I don't want to be the person bringing 20 horses to a show. Like the way I'm doing this work, it just doesn't scale like that, right? The 5 to 6 that you can manage, you can provide the time you need, you can be observant, you don't get overwhelmed. And that I think is important for me to maintain. I finding in horses with interesting things so that I'm continuing to learn and expand what my capabilities are, and teaching and training is really important. And and doing clinics, like, so I do a couple of clinics a year that are awesome, and I love doing this because it's like such a interesting mix of things that I get. It's not just hunter jumper stuff. I get to see all kinds of different things, like, so expanding that. And then eventually I think like getting to the point where like I'm really interested in the idea of like helping the next generation of horsemen, like, and having something where I can help young professionals that felt the way I did 14, 15 years ago, like finding a way to integrate helping them into this, whatever that might look like, whether it's like as an assistant or not thrilled with the idea. Like, I don't love working student concept in the world, but something similar to that where
Call a mentor. I think mentor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a great.
But yeah, and then having someone that can kind of step in and help with the work we're doing so that I can show, or I can clinic, and I can work with other people, like, and expand it out. But again, as I said, like, I'll never work within a system. Like, there'll never be the Devereux Branham system of horsemanship. Like, it's just not my way of doing this. And so, but I do want to help the community. And so my idea of helping the community is grassroots. Like, how do we help one person? And then that person can help a person, and that person can help a person.
Thing I've been thinking a lot about too is how to get back to introducing this stuff to the younger generation. Yep. That's one of the things that kind of fell by the wayside, but it over time dissolved a little bit, the lesson horse program. So when I went out on my own, wasn't doing the thing anymore, over time, it's hard and expensive to maintain lesson horses. Is. You don't treat them in the way that they are often treated in that model. And then it, as they got older and things, it just didn't, I was busy. It didn't make any sense to replace them and to keep, I had other things to do. So it doesn't make sense to go seeking out more and more young students and paying for new horses. But that's definitely something I think is kind of sad. Like, it's like, I love helping horses and people that have gotten a little lost and like really need help and want to figure out this other way. But it's also like, man, I don't want it to always be that,
What? Yeah, because
we gotta catch them sooner.
Exactly. Like, what if we stepped in before there were problems, right? No, I know.
When I've been talking a lot about optimization, that's exactly why. And in a way, it's like I want people to see like your performance and all this stuff can, it's trying to be more proactive so that it doesn't have to always be like, please SOS, save this ship, trying to get farther and farther back in the line. And I think getting to, not just kids, just new horse people, introduce people to horses for the first time in a way that makes sense like this. Rather than their first time being that old model and then they have to go like relearn this other option later, I want to see what it's like when that very first thing, because I think when people, not that I've had the opportunity to see a ton of it, but even my own kid is a good example. You know, she's 5 now, so like she rides. She has no concept of like some of the things that I was doing at 5 years old already, literally. You know, so it's going to be really interesting to see where riders that start like this can go without.
It is really exciting.
You know how much work it takes in retraining our body and mind from that old way of doing it to redo it. It's like a whole different ball game if you can do that from day one. You know,
it is.
So,
and I love that idea of proactive, like that. Yeah, what like because so much of horsemanship is reactive. Like, this is going wrong. What do we do now? Like versus, what if it just started the way that it could feel like, and the understanding that we can have around it. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that'll be we'll have to have another podcast. I mean, maybe sooner, but maybe in like 10 years we'll have to have another one and be like, man, this is what it's starting to look like.
Well, and I think like that time frame kind of makes sense for seeing more change in the world. Like it's like I really do. Like but yeah, it's such a, because like you said, it's such a tough question though, of setting that up for the masses, like in a like financially stable kind of way that's good for the horses. That's a tough question.
I do think that it's easier when you start. This is what I don't think I quite knew how to do back when I still had lesson horses.
Okay.
Totally understand how to I mean, if you don't let people ride and you truly spend time teaching people how to connect and how to communicate, and the riding comes at a far more advanced understanding level, I do think it starts to become more financially possible because, you know, a horse can do that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And then it also in that way sort of weeds out the people that don't want to connect. And then you only have so many that need to, you know, by the time they're actually ready to ride from this new standard, by the time they're ready to ride, you know, they're pretty committed. So, you know, I think it's probably kind of like what you're doing. Like sounds like you only bring in intermediate more people. You only have a couple horses. So they're already pretty committed to something. It's not like you're just experimenting with horses, you know, to see if this is a thing. So,
and I actually dabbled in like beginner, like never rode before beginner, like just a couple of times, just to kind of like I had gotten a call from an adult that was like, I've not ridden, but I'd like to get into it, and I know someone that knows you. And then I was like, well, I started saying how I don't do that. And then I'm like, wait a second, I actually have a horse that could be, and now I'm intrigued at how this would go. So yes, why don't you come out and we did that. We started on the ground, learning to connect. And, you know, it was tricky. Like working with an adult, it's a little easier, I think, to kind of pass on some of these concepts. I don't know if I have the skill set yet of being able to express some of the concepts that we work in to children in a way for them to understand and enjoy. And but again,
I will tell you from my brief experience with children so far, child. She has multiple personalities, so you know, like having children. It's more intuitive than you would think.
Okay,
you'll have
interesting.
to do less expressing than you think.
Which is so true of horses.
Yeah, exactly. Because they are so pure. Is the way to put it. None of it's taken away. There's not like this. I don't know. I feel like when it comes to animals and stuff, unless they're scared, there's not an awkwardness, and you don't. I feel like it's way more communication to the adult. And some are totally into it and ready to hear it because I've had the experience of the adults who have already gone down the personal development path. And they like hop over a little to the horse thing, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, this is so many parallels," you know, and that kind of thing. And that's where I think there is that, like, there's a lot of communication and they either are like interested or not.
Yeah.
With the kids, it's that intuitive, like you use the intuitive, like,
Yeah.
it's amazing sometimes if I just ask, well, I will ask Paisley, well, what does Dolly think? What does Dolly want you to do? You know, it's amazing what comes out of her mouth sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that sounds great. Okay,
Yep.
let's do that.
Let's try that.
But, you know, so I just learning to let that sort of be a thing, and like, because kids don't think that's weird.
Yeah.
They do.
Exactly. Or do you even find with her being young and not having an opposing experience that you would maybe suggest something, she'd be like, duh. Like, yeah, that's the case. Like it'd be something for us that had, like, maybe when we were that age would have been like, yeah, of course that's how this works. Like, but because we had so much other stuff put on top of it that we had to be talked about. I think
one of the things I have to be careful of, or I have to stop and think about a lot, is, you know, for me, both growing up, taking lessons. I mean, I was at a quarter horse showing barn at 5, so, like, you know, I was around stuff and rules a lot.
Yeah.
And then I taught a lot of kids, so I had all these rules of safety and do's and don'ts, and I've really had to look at that. Obviously, safety is very important to me, but there's some stuff I'll be like, Paisley this, that, and I'm like,
wait a second.
It's actually really stupid. Yeah. You know? Like, it's just, I can't think of anything great off the top of my head. One might be, this might be controversial to put out in the interwebs.
But cut that.
Yeah. But just an example I can think of is like walking behind the horse.
Okay.
Now, of course, it would be horrible for Paisley to come running up behind a horse that is not expected. Like, this is the kind of thing I want to teach. But when she is totally connected to the horse, they are like in this thing, she's brushing her, and she happens to want to go around the back, and I'm like, oh, no. And then I'm like, they know where they're at. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason this child can't walk right behind this horse right now. Like, that's a silly rule.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. I love that example because it's another one of, like, what you do and how you do it. Like, okay, if the what you do is, or what not to do is not, do we go around this horse right up next to him or not? Well, how are you doing it? Are you doing it thoughtfully? Have you done it through a connection with the horse? Like, is the horse expecting you? Like, are you communicating with them actively in the moment? Like, or are you just running up behind them? Like, so again, that idea of how we do something colors what we should do. I love that example.
And by, you know, making all those rules of, like, we don't do this, our lead rope never touches the ground, all these rules are what allow us to not develop feel. Really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, that's really well put.
And again, in the name of safety, this is why we do all of this. And it's like, okay. You know, there have been times, here's another example I just thought of, speaking of the lead rope, there's times that Paisley's brushing Dolly, I just have the rope on the ground, and we're just, like, doing our thing, and Dolly is just, like, head to the floor, like, she's just all over kid horse life, you know what I mean? And I think, man, like, a certain group of horsemen would just be all over that, like, child standing here, there's no helmet in sight, and I am a helmet person, but for this, there's no helmet in sight, this rope is all over the ground, and we're just, like, doing our thing, you know? Like, that would just make some people throw up in their mouth, and I'm like, man, I couldn't be safer. You could follow all those rules, and I'd still be scared to be by that horse over there.
Yeah, no, exactly,
that we couldn't be safer right now, you know what I mean? So, just another example.
I love that one too, because it's just like, I mean, it's how the situation feels. Just like where you could jump in, like, oh God, we got to do, like, the kind of mom worry, right? Like, of like, oh God, we're not safe. And then there's a consequence to that. There's a consequence to that reaction, like, of we're instilling a fear response into this. So now a situation that was safe, was calm, now all of a sudden has this more up energy into it. Maybe it isn't safe anymore. So yeah, we better grab everything up and get tight about it.
And that energy that blocks our actual intuitive field.
Exactly, yeah.
Blocks us from actually being intuitive and truly being safe, Yeah.
So, really interesting
stuff.
Yeah. Yes. I love it.
Well, I have loved this chat.
This has been awesome.
We better wrap it up, but it's been very fun. How can people find you if they want to hunt you down? You're not that easy to find.
I am not that easy to find. I tell you, like, I've had clients offer, like, we should make you an Instagram, like, let me be in charge. And I'm like, so I can be found like Devereux Sport Horses, searching for that on Facebook. I have an old website that has my contact information, that's still present.
I'll put your contact information of your choosing in the show notes as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. But I have a slight Facebook presence that can be found, and that's about it. That kind of relied on word of mouth, and
for better or worse.
Exactly. And been kind of flying. Like, I was like, I don't have enough of a handle on this to be out there with it, right? Like, it's now maybe I do, but then I've kind of also gotten to appreciate my kind of slow, gradual growth of this work. So it's like, haven't really been incentivized to like put everything out there in too big a way yet. But nope, Facebook, and we'll put my contact out there, and happy to chat with people. So love it. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. This is a great experience.
We'll have to do it again, because obviously we could go down some rabbit holes.
I'd love to.
Departments for sure. So we'll do that again, and I will talk to you soon.
All right. All the best.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. That's a wrap. Thank you for listening. If you can, please rate or review the show, subscribe, comment, share with a friend. We also really appreciate your participation on social media. Anything you may be called to do will help us reach new listeners and help the style of horsemanship to flourish. Until next time, happy horsing.